But behind the spectacle, the evidence stacked relentlessly against him. Forensic experts testified about fibers found on victims that matched clothes from Bundy's apartment. Bite mark experts presented photos that matched Bundy's dental impressions, a groundbreaking forensic technique at the time. Survivors and witnesses took the stand, pointing directly at him, describing his presence, his voice, his violence. Through it all, Bundy maintained an eerie calm. He took notice, whispered to himself, sometimes smiling, sometimes looking bored. It was as if he didn't fully grasp the gravity of the situation, or worse, he enjoyed the spotlight too much to care. The prosecution presented the brutal details of the Chi Omega attacks. They described the injuries, the timelines, the horrifying evidence left behind. The courtroom grew silent, heavy. The judge, though professional, struggled to hide his emotions. At times, he stared at Bundy with a mix of disbelief and sadness, as if wondering how someone could be so intelligent and so monstrous at the same time. Then came the verdict. Guilty on all charges. When the judge delivered the sentencing, he spoke words that became iconic. "You would have made a good lawyer, Mr. Bundy. I would have loved to have you practice in front of me. But you went the other way, partner. You went another way." Bundy thanked him politely. It was chilling. The trial ended with Bundy sentenced to death. But even then, he wasn't finished. He used interviews, books, fan mail, and psychological games to prolong his image. He wanted to stay in the spotlight until the last possible moment. He died. Chapter 9. Death Row. Confessions and Execution, 500 words. Death Row changed Ted Bundy. The confidence, the arrogance, the ego, they remained. But underneath it all grew fear. Bundy knew the clock was ticking. He delayed his execution multiple times through legal maneuvers. He gave interviews to psychologists, journalists, and even pastors, each time revealing a little more, playing a new game. He confessed to 30 murders. Investigators believe the real number was far higher, possibly over 100. Bundy used his confessions as leverage. The more he admitted, the longer he stayed alive. He described his methods with disturbing detachment, as if discussing someone else. He blamed pornography, stress, and emotional turmoil. But behind those excuses, experts saw something different. Control. Ivanin, Death Bundy wanted control. In his final interviews, Bundy's mask began to crack. His voice trembled. His eyes lost their confidence. He was a man facing the one thing he could not charm, manipulate, or escape his own ending. On the morning of January 24th, 1989, Ted Bundy was escorted to the execution chamber. Outside the Florida State Prison, over 2,000 people gathered, holding signs, cheering, shouting. Some held banners reading, "Burn, Bundy, burn." The scene was almost surreal, an entire crowd celebrating the end of a man who once walked among them unnoticed. Bundy's final words were simple. "I'd like to give my love to my family and friends." At 7:16 a.m., the electric current surged through his body. The monster who had fooled America, who had escaped twice, who had charmed reporters and judges alike, was finally gone. A plume of smoke rose from the chair. Years later, investigators, psychologists, and criminologists would continue studying Bundy, not because of his crimes alone, but because he forced the world to confront a terrifying truth. Evil doesn't always hide in the shadows. Sometimes it stands in the light. Sometimes it smiles. Sometimes it wears a suit, shakes your hand, and convinces you it's harmless. Ted Bundy shattered the illusion that danger has a face. His story remains a chilling reminder that monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they look like us. As the story of Ted Bundy draws to its final, chilling breath, we are left staring into the hollow spaces he carved into American history. The prison lights flickered that January morning in 1989 as the last chapter of his life closed inside the electric chair. Outside, a crowd celebrated as though a great shadow had finally lifted, holding signs, chanting, cheering. For them, justice had been served. For the families of the victims, it offered a small, fragile sense of closure. But for the world, the deeper questions remained. Ted Bundy's crimes were not just brutal. They were a distortion of trust. He weaponized charm with precision, using good looks and confidence like tools sharper than any knife he ever carried. Bundy proved something terrifying, that evil does not always enter our lives roaring. Sometimes it walks in quietly, dressed neatly, speaking politely, smiling warmly. Sometimes it looks exactly like the man sitting next to you in a classroom, holding doors open, offering help, or telling stories that make everyone laugh. That was Bundy's greatest weapon, not his strength, not his intelligence, but his ability to look harmless. And maybe that is why his story continues to haunt us long after the echoes of his footsteps have disappeared. Because Ted Bundy forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth about human nature. We expect monsters to look like monsters. We expect danger to be obvious. But Bundy reminds us that deception often comes wrapped in familiarity, hidden beneath practiced gestures and well-rehearsed smiles. As we reflect on everything he destroyed, we must also remember those whose names rarely make headlines, the victims. Young women with futures, dreams, families, voices. Their stories were cut short not by fate, but by the choices of one man who believed he had the right to control life, and when it suited him, to take it. They were not just victims in a notorious case. They were individuals with hopes, talents, and lives that mattered deeply. Let their memories be the part of this story we never forget. Bundy's life ended, but the lessons from his crimes endure. We learn that trust must be earned, not assumed. We learn that evil can hide behind the face of a stranger or someone we think we know. And most importantly, we learn that even the darkest chapters in history carry warnings for the future. The final image of Ted Bundy is not the confident law student, nor the charming young man smiling for the cameras. It is the last flicker of light inside the execution chamber, and the silence that followed, a silence heavy with everything he took, everything he confessed, and everything he could never bring back. This is not just the end of his story. It is a reminder. Evil can be ordinary, danger can be familiar, and the greatest threat may be the one you never see coming. And that is the haunting legacy of Ted Bundy.